Hey, everybody, this is Chuck Ingram. Welcome to the virtual SMB Summit. I am so excited to have our guest with us today, Andrew Dietz. He is a thought leader, and he has written a book that he gave to me a couple years ago. And I asked Andrew if he would appear on in this summit with us because I love this book so much. And I repicked it up before it, and then I forgot how much I liked it. And I'd like to read a little bit about Andrew's bio. He is a fantastic thought leader and author, and he owns an awesome business here in the Atlanta area. Andrew Dietz is the founder and president of Creative Growth Group Incorporated, a consulting company that helps businesses and professional services firms grow relationships and revenue. He advises clients across the United States, Canada, and Europe in industries ranging from law and accounting to IT services, public relations, and business strategy. Clients include firms like Deloitte, Microsoft, and Cushman and Wakefield. And I know we work together at, I used to work at a big consulting firm called Avanade. We work together there. You have some fantastic relationships.
Yeah. And I've, since we worked together at Avanade, I've been doing a lot more work with B2B product companies as well as service companies.
Oh, nice.
So that's been another addition to my efforts. And we've taken a lot of what we've been doing with from a business development standpoint in services where thought leadership matters tremendously, and bringing that to the table for B2B product companies that, can use content and educational marketing and thought leadership as a way to build better relationships and sell.
Yeah, you're tempting me to go into a topic I was wanting to talk about later, but I'll hold you to that one shortly. Well, Andrew, welcome first, and thank you so much for joining us. I think people are going to get a ton out of this. Could you give us a little bit about your backstory first?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was born a poor boy in Brooklyn, New York. No, I was born in Brooklyn and raised in Connecticut, but I've lived in the South for over 30 years. My background was really in the media business, in the content business, magazine publishing, starting out in the world of computer magazines in the mid-'80s when a company called Ziff Davis, which had been very successful for years, had entered the computer magazine business, and that became their core at that time. And I worked on the first Apple computer related magazine. And then, so the first part of my career was my father was in the magazine publishing business. So growing up in high school, I would do everything from circulation and content to ad sales. So first part of my career was really in ad sales in the magazine publishing industry. I ended up going back to business school and refocusing. This is early 90s before the web. But I did have a sense that interactive media, at the time it was online services like Prodigy and Cox and CD-ROMs and things like that was a place for entrepreneurial opportunity. So I went back to business school and I focused on that area, and ended up coming out of business school working for Bell South, which one of the baby Bells at the time. And they were, like many, building one of the incarnations of interactive TV. They were trying to overbuild the cable TV companies, and in addition to phone service, offer cable TV service with this interactive television component, video on demand. So I started with them in a role as a content manager, and as that faded, that effort faded and grew into bellsouth.net, their internet efforts and broadband efforts, I became a director of marketing and VP of marketing for that part of their business and helped launch that and their broadband activity. So then I left there and helped start a small venture capital fund that with a mentor of mine, and we were joined at the hip with Mellon Bank and their Mellon Ventures group. And we used their money and their people in their office space, and ultimately they got wise to that and brought us in-house. Anyway, after that, I ended up running one of the operating companies. We sold that. Ultimately, I started Creative Growth in 2003 to focus first on exactly the problem you were talking about in professional firms or B2B companies, product companies that are selling complex products,
Mm-hmm.
technical products. They have a lot of engineers in their business and they're selling into teams of people at their clients, not just one individual. Very much similar to how, an accountant, a lawyer, a consultant has to attract business.
Mm-hmm.
I focused on that market. How do we help that kind of organization attract and keep and grow clients?
Mm.
And that's what I've been doing since 2003 and really enjoying it.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool background. Very cool background. And you've written an amazing book that I mentioned earlier. It's backwards when I show it, look at my monitor, but I'm hoping that other people can see it the proper way. So I love this book. And I sort of schemed, sorry about that. I sort of schemed out two questions about that, this book, because I'm very curious about both. One, I'm a big fan of the book The Goal, and it's kind of it's the theory of constraints, and I'm not a math guy nor an engineer, and I would never read a book about improving processes without a story behind it. And the guy put a cool story about it, and you kind of did that with sales and marketing here, where you put it's a story of a guy that works at a law firm and he's learning how to sell better so that he can try to, I think he's like a senior something and he's going to become a partner, and he's trying to hone his selling and business development skills to get there. And you're telling that story, and then you kind of tell a little bit of the story, and then you jump, the coach sort of jumps in like, the football analogy. And so I'd love to hear how you thought of that approach.
Well, yeah, a book like The Goal, great book. And there are other books like that are business fables. They're written as stories. And the Opening Playbook is a hybrid. It's part business fable or story that engages and part how-to. And I was really hoping to engage kind of the next generation of business developers and marketers, and find a way to relay this information that wasn't boring, hopefully, and but was more direct maybe than a typical business fable. So that's how I came up with that kind of hybrid approach of, it starts with the story and then it jumps into the coach. So it's like a football coach reviewing game film with his team. In this case, the game footage is of a bunch of professionals trying to grow business and stumbling along the way and then finding their way. The other thing that this book came out in 2014, and it was really before a lot of the co-working spaces became popular, but I had the setting take place of the story in a co-working space. So it's interesting that has become such a great environment for not only working, but relationship development. What I had done when I started my business was I used to bring groups of professionals together in little round tables called the Rainmaker Council. And they were each from a different profession, but they each, and I facilitated those groups, and I still do those, but not in the same way I did back then. But I would facilitate, but it was peer sharing and peer learning. So there's nothing better than, especially for proud professionals who have advanced degrees, they're really smart, they're A-type personalities. They don't necessarily want to have to go to a teacher. They, are more comfortable sometimes learning from their peers. So that was part of this approach as well. But the idea of opening is really what drove me. You've probably seen or know of the Glenn Ross. Was a Broadway play, and then it was a movie.
Yeah, I remember the movie very, very much.
Yeah, for anybody listening
No
or
coffee.
yeah, exactly. For anybody listening or watching that isn't familiar with Glengarry Glen Ross, I recommend you know go to YouTube and look up the scene with Alec Baldwin. Now, this is Alec Baldwin 30 years and 30 pounds ago,
Yeah.
but he plays the hardcore sales leader. If you can't close 50 deals by tomorrow, damn it, I'll find somebody who can. Right? And people freak out and they do unethical things. That's closing. ABC, he writes on the board, always be closing. So I wanted this book to be about always be opening. How do we open relationships? How do we keep those relationships? Not about trickery, not about tricks and tips and, you know, finding ways to slick our way in, but genuine relationship development that lasts. Because we have to do more than sell. We have to maintain our relationships, especially now, always. But I think COVID, this whole situation has really really maybe lifted the bar of how we build and sustain relationships with people in a very genuine way.
Absolutely.
So, and I'll tell you one story that kind of motivated this whole opening approach. And it was when I was first, after I worked for Ziff Davis, I worked for another magazine publishing company, and the owner was, well, he may have had some substance problems. I'm just saying, I don't know for sure, but he brought us all in, and I was still in my early mid-20s. He brought us all around a conference table in New York, and all the salespeople from all over the country, and he stalked around the table like a jaguar looking for his prey. And he slammed on the table and things went flying up in the air. And oh my God. And he literally said, if you all can't sell, you know, this enormous bundle of offerings by the end of the month, then damn it, I'll find people who can. So I went out and I knocked on the door of my best client. And I would not leave that office until they were ready, until they committed to buying this big package. Well, I left by my shirt collar, basically. He didn't physically accost me, but he was a big dude, and he got up and he escorted me out. That's how hard I pushed. That was not, that was an attempt to close that had no value for my client. How do we do the opposite? How do we bring value constantly to the table so we always earn the right for them to step forward towards us and buy, not us selling, but us putting ourselves in position to be bought? And that's what opening is.
You know, it makes me think of the initial. So the main guy in your book, his name is Sam, and he has his boss asked him to go out and meet with a client, and that your writing style is very. It probably a little of both. Probably I had some tough moments in sales in the past. It just resonated too much because, you know, I would read these. My first job out of school, I'd listen to these Tom Hopkins tapes and Zig Ziglar tapes and stuff, and they probably didn't even say but I thought I was supposed to go close.
Right.
And I maybe it resonated a little bit too much, but his opening wasn't perfect in that. If you could talk about, you know, what he kind of did and what should people be thinking about in terms of their opening a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, let me go back to the main premise of the book to set that stage, which is really a simple statement, seemingly. Business development or marketing. I don't necessarily separate sales and marketing, or, you know, that it's more of a continuum, right? But
smart, yeah.
But as we try to grow our business, there are three main things we do. A formula, let's say. We have to reach more of the right people with more of the right conversations in the right way. So first of all, let's start with, and I'll come back to Sam in a minute, but so what does right mean? That's the key question. And that's what Sam might have done a better job of asking himself. Right is what is of value for the person I'm interacting with? How am I bringing something of substance to that person so that they're better off for having met with me, whether or not they're ready to buy right now? When I start off a conversation with, hey, you ready to buy from me now? What would you like? Some marketing services, Chuck? How about now? No?
I'll ask
Now?
again.
How about now?
7 times.
That's just stalking. That's not relationship development. Yeah, exactly. If you ask 7 times to get the no, then you'll get a yes. So, the starting point is really having some empathy for and affinity for who you're talking with. Genuine, asking yourself genuinely, what makes you curious about them and their business? What do you want to know? What might you share in common or points of affinity? Things like that. So right is, this is the right person. Now, Sam wasn't necessarily talking to the right person in that case. I mean, just because it was a target that sounded good didn't mean it was the right target or the right prospect for Sam. Now, we can't always reach out to the right prospect. I understand that. Right. But if we want to raise the odds that we succeed, we need to find more of the right prospects and spend more time with them. Right prospects appreciate who we are, what we do, how we do it, our history, our work history, our, the kinds of problems we solve, those kinds of things. Can we figure that out ahead of time? Well, we probably can, really. There are a lot of ways we can do that now with online tools, right? We can go to LinkedIn and find out if we went to the same college, if we went, we share, common interests, if we know people in common, things like that, that warm up, that allow the conversation to begin warm. Rather than cold. So right is it the right prospect? Right is, do I have something that really is right for a problem they have right now? Right is not just what I do, though. Right is not just that I have the right solution, but the thing that I do, but the right way I do it. The way I do something. Well, let's take lawyers for an example. There are litigators who are fire-breathing dragons, right? They're going to, absolutely tear, just shred the opponent and rip, they're going to get that deal and get it done, damn, win, lose. And then there are those that are very calm and cool and, win-win and so on. And which one's better? Depends, maybe. I don't know. I have a preference. And clients do have a preference for one type or another. So what kind of lawyer are you, Sam? And does this person prefer your style or a different style? So understanding that going in, not only what you do, but how you do it and whether that's a fit. Understanding, so understanding what I would call your positioning or your claim to fame or your opening strategy is what I refer to it in the book is the starting point. Sam did none of those things.
Right.
He just, you look at the book of lists in the business journal and you see the top company and that must be my best prospect. Not necessarily. So he started in the wrong place. He didn't think about his customer and his prospect and how he would approach that and so on. And he went right to the close. He didn't earn the right.
He kept doubling down like we were talking about.
He did, exactly. Like me before I got thrown out. So yeah, I mean, the expectation that you can go into one first meeting and close a deal is, there are, let me take this to digital marketing for a minute, because in digital marketing, there's this idea of performance marketing. I'm going to have a very precise approach to, each stage of the buying journey. I'm going to send something out and I'm going to hope they're going to buy, and I'm going to, and there are some companies out there, a lot of software companies, for example, they only want, they don't want my firm. They want a company that is going to push out email campaign and only get paid if they sell that customer's product online.
Mm-hmm.
And they expect that to happen as quickly as possible. God bless them if they can do it. But it's not typically the kind of clients I have.
Mm-hmm.
You have to build a relationship of some kind, and it doesn't only happen digitally. And that is certainly true of those in professional services. It's definitely true of those in big ticket B2B products and services as well. So I'm sorry, let me just, right, prospects,
Mm-hmm.
right conversations, talking about things that benefit the other person, bringing content to the table that benefits them, whether or not they're ready to buy. Marketing brochure is not content, that's solicitation material. Dropping a white paper on the table and saying, here, it's not really content. Content is helping somebody understand the implications of that thinking, of whatever you're bringing to the table. And then the right context. I know you talk about context with a lot of what you do as important, and this is true as well here. What setting am I in when I'm building this relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Digitally, that makes a difference too. And at what time am I reaching somebody? In what medium? Where is my article appearing? Where is my ad appearing? Where is this podcast appearing, and in what way? Who am I hanging out with, and how is that showing me off?
Mm.
So those are the three elements.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you said a couple things I'd love to tease out if we could. One is that this whole, it feels like while sales and marketing usually are down the hall from each other in a building, the client doesn't really care. And I think I read somewhere a couple years ago that 60% of the client's decision is made before the salesperson has even walked in the door. So there has to probably be a little bit more collaboration there than we've done in the past. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on how digital and sales marketing and sort of using digital could help firms to have a better opening when they meet clients.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of marketing? Marketing is all about helping a company sell more stuff to more people for more money more often. That's
right.
the marketing, right? So what we try to do is what I, at least from a content standpoint, I call it sales-enabled content. We begin. So we don't create marketing separate from sales. We have to begin with sales in mind. How is this asset, let's say this marketing asset we want to create, how is it going to help our sales colleagues engage in a more meaningful conversation that builds a relationship, that moves a relationship closer to that prospect becoming a paying client, a customer? And if you, so it doesn't. An example would be just beginning to include sales in the marketing planning and having that kind of discussion from the beginning. What kind of hooks can we put in to this activity or process? An example might be marketing decides they want to do a survey, a study, and they're going to use that. Now, on the surface, that study would be to promote the brand. We're going to be able to put a press release out. We're going to be able to write articles, and people will know us better because we did a survey about, something, CRM, and how people are using CRM. What I would want to see happen is that the marketing team brings sales in from the beginning and says, you know what if you go out to your prospects and clients and ask them what they would want to see from this kind of a survey? Would they even want that? Number one, that creates a touch point. It's not a sales call, it's a touch point. Chuck, we're thinking about doing this survey. What do you think? Would this be of any use? What have you seen? How could we do something different than what everybody else does Touch point
Mm-hmm.
number one. Touch point number two, marketing works with sales to usually a survey these days. It's going out, being pushed out digitally. People are responding. No conversation, live conversation with a client or prospect. Well, what if we carve off a few of the surveys and we have our salespeople go out and do live in person, or now, obviously, 6 feet at a distance, or digital,
Zoom.
but live,
Mm-hmm.
conversations, and step somebody through that part of the survey. Helps the
Mm-hmm.
survey, you get more richer, what we call verbatims or quotes, essentially.
Right.
But it is another way for that salesperson to build a relationship, right? So
Mm.
then we push the written study out, and marketing ought to be equipping sales to bring that out, not only push it out by email, but
Mm.
literally set up conversation. So that's a small example, but one way that really, yeah, marketing and sales need to be viewed as a blended continuum.
Mm.
And I think that's more important than ever now, especially with digital, or companies are going to be wasting a lot of money.
Absolutely. So we here we sit in the middle of this coronavirus thing, and as you said, things are already changing, and it seems like that a lot of folks think that they're going to be even different when it's not going to be here forever, but things will probably be quite different later. Do you have any thoughts on kind of how things might change a little bit after that, especially relative to sales and marketing?
Yeah, it's the big question, and I'm not sure, obviously, but we are being habituated now to using digital for meetings
Mm.
like this in a
Right.
whole different level than we ever have before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a lot that's positive about that.
Mm-hmm.
That said, we all know we're human beings, and nothing beats in-person relationship. We just can't. The timing is a little bit off.
Right.
There is something. We can sense each other's presence. This is what humans do, and so
Yeah.
I think there is going to be an opportunity for, to the extent we're allowed to do it, when the time comes, much more in person. There's going to be
Mm.
a pent-up craving to get together.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that digital is going to come down from the boost it's gotten because of this.
Mm.
I think these kinds of conversations, and not only podcasts or broadcasts, but just general, the kind of conversations we're having, definitely on the uptick. What does that mean? It means we have to learn how to have these kinds of meetings and read the body language that
Mm-hmm.
maybe is harder to read this way. Because I don't know, I'm half looking at myself. Or do I look up here? Do I look down? Where am I looking?
I've always, and this is a new thing in the last, it's like the way my office is set up is the camera's up above your head, and I try to move the screen so it's as close as I can, so I
Yeah.
can look and see what you're expressing at the same time I look at the camera, but it's crazy.
I will say this, to the extent we do more of this from home, there is an opportunity to warm up relationships, because all of a sudden you're in somebody's home.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different level of personalization than we
Yeah.
have when we're
Mm-hmm.
in the cold climate of an office.
Mm-hmm.
Before we started and you and I chatted, we talked about our, guitars, right? I have
Exactly. That's right.
over in the corner, So, it's, and then and we're more human, the dog barks and the kid runs in, and
I've got a neighbor doing his lawn next door, in
oh
case you
yeah.
hear that.
Oh, anytime I have a phone call, there's no question a leaf blower is going somewhere. The minute
Yeah.
I turn on the Zoom. Anyway,
Mhm.
so I think, again, to the extent we not only we communicate more this way by teleconference, but
Mhm.
we do it from our homes or personal environments. That, I think that changes the dynamic as well.
So it's interesting is I was telling you before when we talked, is like I read this place, read this place, read this place, and I think people are gonna, more companies might feel a little bit more like what Tesla does, where they build a really fancy car in a really expensive place to build a car, but there's a lot of robots doing it. There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of vertical integration, and so they sell straight to the customer versus kind of being a guy that makes something and somebody else that sells it. And it feels like there's a lot of people will buy things on subscription, which everything I said, I think just puts a big underline what you just said, is like it's all more digital, yes, more physical in person, yes, but certainly more all related to more relationship and experience, right?
Yeah, and I'm coming at all of your questions from a B2B standpoint. From a B2C standpoint, the whole question of retail, it's dramatically shifting. There has been Adobe, which does this digital, I think it's the digital economy index now. They just launched it in March. And they showed, I think, online grocery shopping's up 25% online. I'm surprised it's not more. Online sales in general up maybe something like 15%. It's interesting to see the items that have changed. The top of their list was bread makers at a 650% increase over prior. So
we have a friend who's gotten deeply into bread making.
Yeah. So, and then a 65% boost in buy online, pick up outside of the store, or, something like that. So what does that mean for the retail environment? It probably means less, I don't know what it means exactly, but, the store environment isn't going to be what it used to be. And the way we treat each other and interact in that environment is going to be different. So, you said earlier that people do much more of their research now before sales even gets in the door. I think this coronavirus is going to up that. I think 80% will be done before, either this way before we meet face to face, we're going to try to be careful about that.
That makes great sense.
Then I don't know if we're going to shake hands anymore. I don't know if we're going to do a Japanese bow or.
Yeah, one of my good friends says Namaste, or people might start doing that, and maybe so. Fist bumps. It's hard not to shake hands, but we'll do what they tell us to do.
I don't know, but look, we build we build trust through relationships. We build relationships by conversations. The best conversations are ones that are genuine and substantive, and bring value to to both parties. But when you're in sales, it's your obligation to make sure you're bringing value to the other person constantly.
You in the book, in the latter part of the book, Sam was getting sort of coached up by his boss because he was he was looking at it, I think his expense reports or call reports or something, and Sam had spent a lot of time with existing clients, and he says, I want you smiling and dialing. I forgot how you wrote it, but it was kind of like, I want you, and Sam's point of view was, hey, I want to nurture these. It feels like where we're headed is more where Sam was going.
Well, yeah, it's look, especially right now, this is the time to embrace your clients and customers, and again, genuine empathy, be there with them. So it is an opportunity in that way. That said, look, it is marketing 101. It's cheaper to build to grow business with existing clients than it is to find new. I don't know why we always forget that. But, like every marketing plan I look at that somebody's done, forgets that completely.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely essential. And especially in businesses, Chuck, like you and I are in, where referral relationships, is really the key. Where does that come from? It comes from, existing clients or what I would call alumni clients, those who've worked with us before and ended up in another place.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's an ongoing, some people don't like it, but I mean, I happen to get joy in the relationships that I build and finding those connections. Which brings me just to one other thing, which is this notion of content and what is something of value we can bring to the table. I say content, and most people probably, especially digital folks, think about what white paper they can download or send to be downloaded, or
how many clicks did I get?
Put up behind a gated thing. Well, that is content, but what else is of value? Well, introductions. Chuck, you really ought to meet this client or this friend or this person who can refer work, or maybe another person I know personally that is a guitar player, whatever. Not only on a professional level, but on a personal level when you've earned the right. So introductions, that's content. Your asset of relationships, right? Your inventory of relationship assets is what I mean, right? Which is what CRM is, the repository for, among other things.
It's supposed to be, at least, right?
Ideas. Hey, Chuck, I was just thinking about you, and here's an idea. What if this happened? Or I wonder if, a question, an inquiry, something that helps somebody think differently. That's value. That's content. There are all kinds of other ways besides thought leadership, although, thought leadership's great. I get hired a lot to create that for clients. I like that. But there are other ways to do it. And for me, the way of making personal connections or introductions is really wonderful to see the light bulb go on between two people. So I think now is also a good time to be doing more of that, using a tool like, or Teams or whatever. Set up a meeting with your client and a prospect and let them get to know each other and help each other, learn from each other. Great opportunity right now.
So that's.
I don't even know what question you asked.
No, it was actually awesome because I feel fortunate that I happen to be familiar with your content and have met you before, but my takeaway out of this was just what you just said. Like my go-do is it's not always that you have to have the smartest content or the funniest content. Sometimes your content can be relationships and caring about somebody else and opening a door. So that was a golden nugget.
People want that right now. The most successful thing I've done recently for my own marketing effort, I had fortunately planned pre-COVID, but it just worked out right. We do a series of online meetings called Content Conversations. And I had one a few weeks ago about data-driven content and data storytelling and so on. And it was like this, except we had 12 people. I kept it exclusive. It wasn't open. It was invitation only. It was a private online meeting. But all of these people we had were prospects or clients of ours. They were all marketing people, because that's who I market to, who were getting to know each other and interacting. And I got such great feedback from that, that we're going to do another one. So, awesome. It's a time for inventiveness. Great creativity comes as much from the provocation that occurs with trauma or challenge as any other way. And so that's the right way to look at this for our businesses and our sales and marketing efforts.
Absolutely. What is it? I forgot the percentage, but there's some percentage of a lot of the most amazing companies were founded in
Mhm.
winter, bad times. And
Mhm.
it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this that's amazing that we would have had before. So Andrew, I know we were up against the time. Awesome stuff. How can people connect with you?
Well, probably the best, there are two websites I have, but the one that probably is most related to what we've talked about today is Creative Influence,
Mm-hmm.
www.creativeinfluence.io. So I have two sides to the coin of my business. One is Creative Influence, which comes at marketing from a content angle. The other is Creative Growth, www.creativegrowth.io, which comes at marketing from a business development or sales enablement angle.
Mm-hmm.
It's just two sides of the same coin. Um, and certainly welcome anybody calling me directly, 404-664-7484 or andrew@creativegrowth.io.
He answers texts and emails. I can vouch for that.
That is true. And the book is The Opening Playbook, a professional's guide to building relationships that grow revenue is on Amazon. And the next one I have coming out, I hope will be out before the end of the year.
Cool.
It relates to my meandering conversation today. In some ways, it's called Follow the Meander, an indirect route to a more creative life.
Awesome. I need to go write you a review, by the way.
Please, that'd be
Andrew,
great.
this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay, we'll talk soon.